The What's Neat This Week podcast is supported by enthusiastic model railroaders just like you. Additional support is provided by Oak Hill Model Railroad Track Supply. Check them out. Their website is ohrtracksupply.com. Thank you very much, Jeff Otto, for your support. I know this is a profession that we don't quite understand.
You tell me to talk about this.
I'm trying to learn as we go along here. It's kind of crazy. There's a learning curve to doing a podcast. I had no idea.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody,
you ready?
Give me a countdown. We're just going to wing this.
All right. 3, 2...
This is the What's Neat This Week podcast for October 21st, 2017. This is show number 14. I'm your host, Ken Patterson, the host of the What's Neat Model Railroad show over at Model Railroad Hobbyist Magazine. And this evening, I've got Daniel Coombs with me, and I've got Dirk Reynolds. I love how those words just drop in and disappear. And of course, my name is Ken Patterson. Isn't that cool? And the words just disappear.
Yeah.
And tonight we got actually a lot to talk about. I want to give a heads up to the Scott Mason and Mike Rose. They do the Scotty Mason and Mike Rose podcast. And they said some awfully nice things about our show and what it is we're trying to do. So hats off to Scott Mason and Mike Rose. Thank you very much. Do you remember the photographs we did with Mike Rose's stuff where we used Mike Buddy's auto racks as background? That was a shot where we had the cover of Craftsman magazine and there wasn't a locomotive on the cover, which was kind of a neat thing back then. I know you've been working on some different stuff, Daniel. You want to kind of talk a little bit about what's going on in your life. Have you been working on those freight cars, your Southern Pacific?
I have indeed, yes. I have acquired, tonight from Dirk, another PFE. It's basically, I don't know how I got interested. I think I covered on a podcast where I said I was at Belleville Train Show, and a guy had some load of just single cars on the trays, and he had like $8 for the thing, and it was like the older Athearn made in, I don't know, like 2010 or something like that. It just looked cool, and of course I modeled Union Pacific, but it's all of its railroad mergers on my hat here. And then I had thought, okay, this is cool, so I looked up research, found out what train it was, and I thought, okay, I gotta get more of these cars to hopefully build this as a unit train as time progresses. I have also modified the first car I got to put a Soundtrack sound car into it, in which I did use the box spring Katie number 5 washer trick to getting power into the decoder from the wheels, which you covered in March 2016's What's Neat, I think.
That's so cool. There was a message on the comments section. Somebody said here, a message to Daniel on his scenery segment. I learned how to paint figures by painting them black first and then paint the colors on them. And that's not anything that's uncommon in the stage industry. I know when they're doing stage sets, what they do is when they build the props, they paint everything black first. And then they bring the colors forward from there. And it's a great undercoat. It's a great way to model things. Dirk, you've got some questions this month that you wanted to ask. These were in the reader feedback comments on YouTube?
Yes. This one is from CIQ-P. Just a suggestion, since it's something I'm dealing with now, I'd like to hear Ken and the round table's thoughts about coming up with a track plan and thoughts on paying someone or a company to design one. I'm currently paying someone to design a track plan for my bench work. I have a spare apartment bedroom with bench work from an online company. It's 8 by 6 L-shaped. I had a quote as high as $2,000, and in the end went with a reputable guy who quoted $600. Thanks. Thoughts on hiring somebody to draw your layout for you?
Daniel, would you hire somebody to draw your layout?
I just draw it myself. Use my imagination.
It depends on what you want to do. If you want to just build a whole layout all at one time and you think you're going to approach it from the strategy of having a plan, an overall plan on this is how I'm going to build this. Or there's the other way to approach it where you slap down a piece of track and you run a train back and forth. And you just think and you imagine, and then you add a curve section and you sit there and you visualize what is it you can do with the speed of the train, how it runs, what is operation, what do I want the layout to be the end result? What do I want it to do for me? Am I designing it as an operating layout? Am I designing it as a layout to run around in circles, which is what my home layout is? There's no wrong way, But I think instead of spending money, I would just lay down some track and run a train back and forth and just see what happens in your mind. Because that's the magic of model railroading is things happen. And all of a sudden you get these great ideas and it just won't leave you alone all day long. You're at work, but you're planning your layout while you're... tell me you've lived that.
Yep, sure have.
What's the next question, Dirk?
Okay, this is from David Muse. Another great episode, everyone. Ken, I do have a question. In the segment about how you speed match, have you selected one loco in your collection that is the base model for how the others will consist? I just wonder that would be one way to assure that all locos can run together. Thanks again for the series. I really do enjoy the content.
Now, somebody said if we had that proto throttle, is that the name of it? What was the name of the throttle we talked about?
Proto throttle, like the handheld.
Rail Pro.
No, Rail
Pro.
Rail
Now,
Pro.
on Rail Pro, evidently that throttle can set it up instantaneously, where the engines themselves sense each other's movement, pushing and pulling, and compensate evenly. It took me, I said, 3 hours to set those up. I set them up for all the Athearn units because there's a lot of Athearn units that I have to work with all the time, and I have to have them running on the layout just to test them and make sure they work to shoot video with. So the Athearn is my common denominator for setting up locomotives. I'll make the scale trains and the Intermountains and the Broadway Limiteds, everything run with the Athearns. And I do that on Decoder Pro using the speed curve, the sliders, and I like that. You've just got to move them a few segments at a time, very little, to make a compensation difference. Or you can also adjust just CV, the CV that controls, what is it, number 2, that controls start voltage. I think it's 2, 6, and 5 that are start voltage, mid voltage, and end voltage. You can set those up, and that'll also give you some compensating. So you can compensate and make the locomotives run together. Thank God all the manufacturers had the foresight ahead of time to at least work on a system where we can run everybody's stuff together. That's the beauty of this.
Yes. Connected to that, this is from Mincy Valley Lines. Hey Ken, could you please do a segment on how to speed match and how to set CVs for the Athearn Genesis FP7s that came out? For some reason, they do not have a CV list. And could you show how to speed match a new locomotive and, say, an old Proto 2000 locomotive?
That's something we'll have to do on What's Neat, where we've got time to produce the content, actually know what we're doing, setting it up, and then show how to do it. I think that would be best done on What's Neat, because I can't do that live on a podcast while we're going through the notes. Yeah. But it's a great question, and it's something that we should talk about more. Somebody else asked, what kind of a DCC system should I buy? Or what should I get started out with? And I would have 2 answers to that. A, Bachmann's Easy app, or what's it called? Easy DCC. I think it's called Easy DCC.
Oh, Easy Command, essentially.
Okay. They've got a system that'll get you into it really inexpensively, under $50, I want to guess. And you can be in DCC and play around and learn what it's like to have DCC. But my best experience with power tools, and I lend the same way to real trains, model trains, is buy the very best that you can buy, because you'll be thankful that you did once you learn all the features that it's got. So get the top-end Digitrax system with the radio, would be my suggestion, or NCE, which I've never had the opportunity to experiment with too much. There's other manufacturers' products that we simply don't have. I can't buy everybody's products. If there's a manufacturer that wants to have their product demoed, featured on our segment, I'll gladly do that. Either
Rail
on
Pro.
What's Neat or here on the show. On this show, we could do something to that effect. We did the DCS 240, where our computer guy, Thomas Heil, did the update on that, and that was a neat segment. Digitrax, in fact, just saw that this week, and I think they might like what they're seeing, because everything's covered in a positive manner. I don't really want negatives, and if we discovered something negative, I'd work it out with the manufacturer before I would make it public. I wouldn't even talk about it. You don't want to hurt somebody's business.
Right.
Is there any more questions, or that?
We got one here from James RIDOLFI. I'm not going to try to butcher that name. Great work, Ken. I am building a lift-out section. I watched your video, but can you go over how to line up the brass contacts for wiring?
I got to tell you, probably the easiest way to do that would be to just put some paint on the original top contacts. If you've got a set of contacts laid and you paint them, when you put the wood into place, pull it apart, the paint will be on where you should put your contacts. As long as you get it reasonably close, it's going to work. And as long as you bend those brass contacts, like you saw in the past What's Neat lift-out video, which was what month? It was
June 2016, and recent.
Just a couple months ago, we did another one on a lift-out with full scenery. But the contacts do match up. So it could be trial and error, honestly, and you can get away with it. But the paint ensures more preciseness.
Here's our last one. This is from RDGK1SE3019. Don't you love these?
Go ahead. Shoot. What is it?
A question for you, Ken. On your layout, do you use ready-made trees or do you make your own?
Both. Sweetwater trees. We used to use those trees on the Midwest Valley Modelers layout because you could buy the armatures, and I think they were $5 or $7 or $10 depending upon how high they were. But we couldn't go out and get sagebrush at the time. Now Ed Dressel sent us a lot of sagebrush, and we've been using that on the layout to make deciduous trees using sagebrush armatures. The best way to make trees, I don't want to give up this because I'm doing a tree video on my website, but the best, most realistic trees is bent wire because you can nail a tree's, you could build an absolute prototype of a tree with wire. I mean, as long as you've got photographs and the correct height to work off of. Now, we're getting this thing from Digitrax. This is a...
Locomotive Wi-Fi. So, if you don't mind me...
Go ahead,
saying
shoot.
about it.
Tell
Right.
us about this thing that we're
So,
getting from
Digitrax recently announced at, I think it was the Orlando show, that there's an LNY device that you hook right into your Loconet, because that's the beauty with Digitrax system. The Loconet, you can expand it with new products that come out with, but this is basically a little box that you put on your layout, and you can run your Apple iPhone with the Y-Throttle app and run essentially run the throttle with the Wi-Fi, and it makes a positive connection because the older way before they came out with this was you had to link your base Wi-Fi through your home, let's say, and sometimes the Wi-Fi may go out and then your throttle gets all wacky. But with Digitrax coming out with the LNY, it's a simple DTX server, so it's its own like wireless network that is direct connection, so you won't lose any connection if it disconnects for some reason. But it allows you to run up to, I think, 8 of those boxes on a single Loconet and up to, I think, 32 devices in total phones.
So we'd have 32 different cell phones down here running trains on this thing?
Oh, yeah.
It's amazing. I think there's like $79 retail price.
Yeah, but it comes with the PS14 power supply and a Loconet cable.
Okay, well, we'll hook that up and show that on the What's Neat video for Model Railroad Hobbyists. But just heads up on that, and we'll fill you in with the details as we learn more about that and how well it works. You can see there's a lot of buildings in front of us tonight because we were looking for material to talk about. And these buildings have been used in so many different photographs and things over the years that actually one company about a year ago said, hey, Ken, we need some new backgrounds because your backgrounds are starting to repeat themselves over. So I've got some new Wathers buildings over here that we're going to start building for the What's Neat show. One of them is a grain elevator, a Prairie Co-op grain elevator, which is a really cool, easy kit to build. And the other one, I think, is a paper mill, which comes in a very large box. We're going to paint this one corner to corner at a 45-degree angle straight through, so the building will have one color on one side and another color on the other side, so when I reverse it around, it'll look like two different kinds of buildings for photographs. But I look forward to building these. Daniel was asking me a little while ago what kind of glues, I know I'm answering the question before you ask it, what kind of glues do you like to use on kits like that? We've never built plastic kits on the What's Neat show yet. We've built nothing but laser kits. But there's nothing better than this tester's glue. Now you can be really sloppy and make a mess with that, and in that case you use one of these glue needles. Have you ever seen one of these touch and flow glue needles? And what they are is it's a needle that you put your Pro Weld glue into, or your liquid glue that you like that eats ABS and eats all the plastic. And it'll just drip out and just follow the line on the model perfectly so that when you lay the glue line down, there's no mess. It'll just suck right into the joint and it's permanent. It sets up pretty quick. So if you haven't checked these out, glue needles are a great modeler's tool for building plastic kits. Now, I got on my Facebook page this week, you sent me something off of the Union Pacific Facebook page, and that is that they've got this brand new beautiful locomotive honoring the U.S. Armed Forces. And what is this? This is locomotive number 1943, Union Pacific locomotive. It's called the Spirit. And it is the 16th locomotive that they've painted up into these beautiful paint schemes for various commemorative and advertising purposes. And this one honors the men and women filling their ranks, and it's a pretty beautiful engine. What do you think about this, Dirk? You saw the photographs of that. I showed it to you. I screen captured a few photographs here so you can see what this looks like, if I haven't already showed this to you when I was explaining it. But it's just a really neat model. I look forward to a model manufacturer coming out with this. You got an opinion on that?
Me? I think it's a great way to just say, well, thank you for your service, and just general, we want to honor you guys out there fighting for our freedom and that. And, I mean, it looks like a decent locomotive. I mean, it looks kind of colorful with all the different armed forces color schemes.
There you go.
So
it's September. I've been trying to shoot video in the backyard, but I couldn't because they're harvesting all the crops now down below the bluff. It's been just kind of noisy, but it's kind of a neat drone sound that the machines make, so you can tell it's that time of the year. We finally picked up and received our microphone so that when we go to a trade show, we'll have good sound quality with this wireless microphone, and we'll get the words "What's Neat" here written on the flag. And as long as we don't, shove it too far, it's a good tool. I think it's a good tool. We'll have to learn how to use it effectively. But that's one step further to improving the show quality. Now, what are these engines I've got in front of me, Daniel?
U-50s.
Those are U-50s. These beautiful Union Pacific locomotives that you see on the front of the table is another project that I've got coming up from Athearn. I still got to put the ladders on them. But these have got sound in them. These U-50s got flashing lights. They're ugly, beautiful, all at the same time. It's just a really cool model that I look forward to shooting some video with. There's a lot of projects going on. We talked about the turbine stuff last month. Should I continue launching into buildings, or Dirk, did you want to talk about something tonight?
Not really. I've been busy. I substitute teach, so I've been busy doing that. So I haven't had time to get on my layout yet, but I am consider redoing it.
You used to have a pretty cool hobby shop in Dupo.
Yes.
And I don't want to go digging for photographs for it, but just briefly tell us about the layout that you had in that hobby shop. What size layout was that, and what was your experience with that, Dirk?
I had a dog loop, one loop on one side, one on the other, and I had double track. I had 30 and 32, and when Athearn came out with the beautiful Challengers and that big boy, and both of which you could take a Sooth generator, snap it in there, and it would smoke, which was kind of funny one day because I thought, well, it says 2, so I put 2 Sooths in there, loaded up, ran it, got a phone call, went back in the office, came back out, and I actually had a cloud on the layout.
How about that?
It was so heavy.
Was that open grid bench work, or was that all foam?
No, it was interesting. I thought I built it one way, and then when I sold it and got rid of it, it was built totally different. It was supposed to be built into the shelves of the shop. So underneath, I'd have shelves that I could put stock into. This on top, yes, it was all foam. I laid the cork on the foam. It was all flat. I had a mountain on one end, desert scene on the other end. It was great. I put the little Dupo crossing. I kind of simulated that a little bit, but it was just designed to test all the locomotives that came in. If somebody bring their stuff in, I could run it all the way around, test them on the curves and all that.
That's cool.
But I'm not really sure. I had 900 square feet in that building, and I'm not remembering the exact length.
But I know it was about 40 feet long, wasn't it?
Yeah, it had to be because it was about, that one end section had ended up being almost 6 feet from the wall to do the 30 and 32 inch.
I can see by our clock we're coming up to the end, and I got 2 segments here that are just going to be photography because it's really fun to run these segments and look at it. So let's cue in just a little bit of music here. As I start out with, last week I showed some of the Bachmann buildings, and I'm not doing this to necessarily advertise, but to show some of the best kept secrets in Philadelphia, and that's these gorgeous buildings that are made of resin. I showed a lot of them last week in the show, but I want to discuss the camera store starting out. It was really kind of a neat building, remind me of the Photomat store, and we did that in various scales. Last week I showed you the 2-stall engine house that they did, which was a urethane kit, and I've got that on my layout, but they also did a single-stall engine house, which looked pretty neat. And the control tower, this is the concrete control tower. I almost want to say it looks like a Santa Fe prototype, but they also made a smaller control tower, which was really kind of neat, more like a frame structure in yellow. That was a neat one with a red roof on it. The car wash, the tank buildings, this ice cream stand. I drove through the middle of Illinois and actually found the prototype of this ice cream stand and featured on a very early What's Neat. I remember there was a gas station that looked like an airplane in N scale. That was kind of a creative music building in that it had that Route 66 theme to it. And they did these in N scale and HO. So for example, here's the HO scale warehouse set up for a photograph, and then there's the N scale warehouse set up. Which brings me to something else. Last week you talked about the 1522. Kind of brought it up, and I showed these photographs of it sitting up on wooden railroad ties where they were repairing it back in 2000 at the St. Louis Museum of Transportation. But that reminded me of the fact that I wanted to show these photos last week of Joe Steinman's brass locomotive that he did of 1522. I want to say it was one of the best locomotives I've ever seen done of this. I shot it outside with these outdoor photographs, and I mean, he had every single bolt detail around the smokestack, just absolutely nailed it.
Had it lighted correctly, too.
All of the lights, the running lights? I think he sold that, didn't he?
He did.
That was an investment for somebody. That was a pretty neat thing. Before we close it out, I want to mention that we've got Jeff Otto from Oak Hill Model Railroad Track Supply, and I think tonight we've got a different template to show off. This is a really interesting template. It's almost 3 feet long, and I think this is a crossover with a bend, a curve in it. I've never used this one to make anything with it yet, but he sells templates to make prefab hand-laid tracks so that you can just move the track around after it's already built, put it wherever you need to on the layout, and you can use railroad ties in these jigs and slap the rail right onto them and pull it out as a one-piece turnout. So check it out, OHR Track Supply. And last week I discussed the fact that he was starting to rent these, and he corrected me this week on the phone, and he said that it's just about $1 a day, just over $1 a day rental. So my $50 a month was a little too high. So you all of a sudden get a discount on this show right now. Let it be written, let it be known. And I think we're at our time limit, Daniel. You want to cut this one? You want to end this one up?
Why not? All right, guys. Well, thanks for watching. Like, dislike, questions. We really would like to answer all your questions that you got. Comments, again, are appreciated. We do like that. That just means we're doing a good job at this. And so, yeah, I'm Daniel Coombs, Dirk Reynolds, and Ken Patterson. This is What's Neat This Week podcast for October 21st, 2017.